You can recall every lyric to a song you haven't heard in a decade.
Yet you forget the name of the person you just met 5 minutes ago.
Why does your brain prioritize rhythm over reality? Today, we explore how melodic structures hijack your hippocampus to make information stick forever.
You walk into a crowded room, shake a stranger's hand, and hear their name clearly. 5 minutes later, your mind goes completely blank. Yet you can hear a 2-second snippet of a song from a decade ago and instantly recall every lyric, every single beat, and exactly where you were the first time you heard it. This gap in recall has nothing to do with a weak memory. It is the result of a brain that evolved to prioritize specific information over others. The human brain is functionally hostile to floating data points. It filters out isolated facts and prioritizes information that arrives in a structured pattern. Improving our social memory requires us to understand the biological filters that separate a flat social label from a rich musical experience. In terms of data, a spoken name is a short, isolated burst of sound, but music arrives as a structured pattern, offering the brain dozens of simultaneous hooks to grab onto. This structure triggers neural synchronization. Your internal rhythms align with the musical beat, physically organizing how you process sound. This synchronization makes information predictable. The brain knows exactly when the next sound arrives, building a stable map before it finishes playing. Rhythm provides a structural skeleton for memory. It is significantly easier for the brain to hold a pattern with a backbone than it is to store a random, contextless noise. This filtering happens in the hippocampus. This region acts as a gatekeeper, deciding which short-term experiences are worth moving into long-term storage. The hippocampus actively rejects isolated data points. However, it prioritizes information that is repetitive, multisensory, or organized into a predictable sequence. A melody carves a distinct, reinforced pathway through this region. This path makes the recall of song lyrics feel automatic, as if the brain is simply following a preset track. When you sing along to an old favorite, you are not working to retrieve words. Your brain is following a neural blueprint that was reinforced through repetition. The amygdala adds the final layer of preservation by tagging specific experiences as emotionally important. Music carries an emotional charge, like a wave of nostalgia or a burst of joy, acting as a glue for the information. This tag signals to the brain that the memory is a priority for long-term storage. A typical introduction in a noisy room lacks this emotional intensity. Without an emotional tag from the amygdala, a spoken name remains an abstract fact and is quickly discarded by the brain. We remember songs because our biology preserves identities, feelings, and movements over contextless data.
So the absolutely crucial point here is, how do we fix this? Can we hack this biological mechanism to start remembering names? Yes, for sure, we absolutely can. But you have to stop treating names as isolated labels and start turning them into an emotional, sensory experience. Here is a super simple 4-step framework you can use. Step 1, repeat. Give your brain an immediate second exposure. Step 2, visualize. Create a visual anchor right there on the spot. Step 3, rhythm. Create a quiet micro jingle in your head. And step 4, meaning. Connect that name to a small story.
Let's picture how this actually plays out in real life at a party. Imagine a guy walks up and says, "Hi, I'm Daniel." You immediately repeat it out loud. "Nice to meet you, Daniel." Then you notice his voice. So you silently visualize Daniel with a deep voice. Next you meet Sarah, who's wearing this bright scarf. You create a quick micro jingle in your head. Sarah with the red scarf. You meet Rami, who tells you he flew in for the event. You anchor it. Rami from Dubai. Now, I know it might sound a little funny to do this in your head, but you are literally giving the name a rhythm, a visual, and a story. You are feeding your hippocampus the exact patterned sensory experience it craves to store that info securely.
We can apply these principles through auditory anchoring, a method of turning names from raw data into a sensory experience. The first step is immediate vocal repetition. Saying the name out loud creates a second exposure and a baseline auditory pattern for the brain to track. Second, connect the name to a visual image, such as a piece of clothing or a physical trait, to provide the data with a concrete anchor. Third, use rhythm. Creating a mental micro-jingle, like Daniel at the table, exploits the brain's natural bias for sound patterns. Finally, embed the name in a mini story by asking a question. As the diagram shows, these 4 steps transform a single dot into a multi-layered experience. Using rhythm and narrative forces the brain to process a social fact with the same neural intensity it gives to a significant life event. This rhythmic principle explains why we still remember the alphabet through a tune, and why advertisers use jingles to make brand names stick. Our cognitive hardware is optimized for these rhythmic sequences. We are built to store information that moves us and moves with us. Information sticks when it's structured, when it's predictable, and connected to broader context. Reliability in memory comes from giving everyday information the rhythm it needs to become unforgettable.
I really want you to take this to heart today. Your brain is not broken. It is simply selective. It was built to remember patterns, emotions, movement, and stories. We already know we learn faster when information has rhythm. I mean, that's exactly why advertisers use sonic branding, why companies have audio logos, and why language apps are tacked with little sounds and jingles. When you forget a name, it's just your brain rejecting weak, unstructured data.
And this really requires a fundamental shift in how we view ourselves. For way too long, we've thought of our brains as digital hard drives, these cold data processors that are supposed to just file away random facts and names like rows in a spreadsheet. But that is not who we are. In reality, we are musical storytellers. We remember what moves us. We remember what repeats. We remember what has rhythm. We remember what feels alive. If we want to remember things better, we need to frame memory as an emotional experience, not just cold data storage.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, kind of provocative thought from our source material. The next time you meet someone new, don't just hear their name. Anchor it. Give it rhythm. Build a pattern worth remembering. But zoom out even further. What would happen if we started turning all the important information in our lives into music?